Trust me, you don't ever want to find out. You won't live long enough to tell any pony else. I walked into the clinic early the next morning to check on Silversnip. She was the worst out of all the prisoners we saved. She was lying down in the back room, and she looked like hell. Her normally long mane was cut short, her left eye was swollen shut, and there were cuts all over her face. Somehow, though, she still looked pretty when she smiled. It was as if her smile had a magic of its own, hiding the horrific marks left over from her short imprisonment. "It's good to see you, Shadow. Why the long face?" she asked as I moved to sit on the chair next to her bed. "It's all my fault you were taken. If I would have just given myself up, they wouldn't have ever taken you or the fools," I said, looking away from her smiling face, ashamed at what happened because of my incompetence. I felt a hoof pull my head back around, making me look into her eyes. "What happened isn't your fault, and I don't ever want to hear you saying so again," she said. "But," I started. "No buts, Shadow. I was the one who made you hide. The blame is mine and mine alone. You are the one who saved us. A small pony fresh from a stable, no less. If anything, you should be proud of yourself," she said firmly. I couldn't help smiling a little as I said, "I only did what any pony else would do. You're my friend, and I couldn't let you die or get sold into slavery." "That's the thing, Shadow. Most ponies in the wasteland wouldn't have done what you did, even for a friend. Life is too short to risk it for another. What you did was amazing, and I want you to know that," she said. "Amazing or not, I just wanted to make sure you were okay," I responded. "Well, I am. Maybe a few scratches and an ugly mane cut, but the doctor said I'll be out of here soon enough, though," she said with a small smile. "Are you sure you're okay?" I asked. "I am, Shadow. Why don't you head back to Equestrian Express and get some rest? You look like you've been up all night," she replied. I sighed and laid my head down on her bed, saying, "I don't want to go back yet. And I have been up all night. I can't sleep with that damn Pegasus talking and laughing with box tape." "Ah, yes. I heard something about a Pegasus being in town. We don't see them much around here. What's he like?" she asked, sounding less hostile toward Stardust than Sapphire immediately was. "He's an ass that doesn't seem to have any manners, and he never shuts up," I replied, recalling how he acted when we told Box Tape what happened. "Is that the only reason you haven't gotten any sleep?" she asked again. I looked up at her, sighing again as I reached into my saddlebag and pulled out the memory orb to show it to her. "Sapphire gave this to me before she left to finish off the raiders. I've been wanting to see what is in it, but I'm too scared to watch it," I said. She cocked her head and asked, "A memory orb? Do you have any idea what might be in it?" "I think it has something to do with my mother. Sapphire thinks it might be a memory of another pony who left my stable," I replied. "Isn't that a good thing? You've been wanting to know what happened to her ever since she left, haven't you?" she asked again. "I have, but knowing might not be a good thing. Right now, I still have good memories of her. I'm afraid that if I watch it, I'll see her differently and lose the good things I remember about her." I felt tears falling slowly down my face. Goddesses, I can't believe I'm crying like this over something that happened so long ago. I felt her hoof on my head again, making me look up at her, saying, "Shadow, you can't live your life in fear of the unknown. It's better to know the truth than to hide from it. And remember, no matter what you find out, you'll always have those good memories of her. If you want, you can view it here. I'll keep an eye on you while you do." "Are you sure?" I asked through the tears. "I'm sure. Go on. I'll be here when you're done," she said. Her smile somehow calmed my nerves. I relaxed a little, then looked down at the silvery orb. I set the memory orb down on the bed next to Silversnip. Using my magic, I concentrated on the orb. As soon as I connected with it, the world melted away. My vision came back slowly, and soon I found myself looking at the boring gray walls of Stable 28. I tried to move my head to look around, but I couldn't. Oh no. What if I did something wrong? I can't move any part of my body. I started to panic for a moment until I realized that I was taller than normal and didn't feel like myself. My head moved and my body started to walk toward a door. I realized then that I wasn't in my own body, but in some pony else's. Now I know why they call it a memory orb. I'm reliving whoever's memory this was. Of course, that's how it worked. I thought that I would have been following the pony who recorded the memory like some kind of ghost. The pony I was in, or riding, no, that sounds dirty. I guess I'll call them my host, moved toward the door and opened it. I could tell I was a unicorn. A horn was hard to miss as magic ran through it. Also, she was a mare. Thank goodness, too. I don't know if I wanted to know what a stallion felt like. She walked through the door and into the living quarters. Standing there was a pony I knew well. It was Auntie. She had a worried look for some reason, something I haven't seen on her much in the past. She looked younger, exactly how I remember her when I was a filly. She looked up as my host walked in. "Oh, thanks, Celestia. I was worried you weren't going to make it. I had to make sure Shadow was sleeping before I could get out. Did you finish it?" said the voice of my mother. But it felt like I was speaking it. My host was none other than my own mother, so I was right, the orb was her. It felt kind of weird being in my mother's body like this, especially because of the height difference. How the hell did the boss get this? "I did. It's all set up and ready for a new user. If I was you wanted her still there, but hidden away. No pony apart from yourself should be able to find them, though I wouldn't put it past the new overmare to try and find a way. She's always been suspicious of you ever since you came to the stable," Auntie said as the door shut behind me, my mother, or whatever. My host flinched and sighed. I remember her always doing this when she was upset. "How much time do I have before she finds out?" "About you or your daughter?" Auntie asked. "Either, I guess," Mom replied. "Shadow's fine. She hasn't shown any signs of getting worse in the past 2 years. As far as any pony knows, she's just a normal filly," Auntie answered. Mom sighed and said, "There's nothing normal about her, and you know that. It's the reason we came here. That and the mission. I'm not too worried about her, though. I've taken the right precautions. No pony should be able to find out the truth. At least not here. What about me, though? Ever since the Overmare retired and she took over, she's been doing her best to find out everything she can about you. I don't know everything she's found, but I do know that my identity is safe and should stay that way. As for you, she knows about the pit buck you brought in with you. I also think she might know why you came here in the first place," Auntie said, looking around, as if some pony was about to jump out of nowhere and yell boo. "I figured as much. I received a transmission from the Rangers. They said the Red Talons had been contracted to find me. I'm not sure by who yet, but there's still a threat if they figure out I'm here. The Elder doesn't know if I'm to be brought in alive or dead," Mom said. Auntie made a small eep sound, then whispered, "But you're safe in here. There's no way they could find the stable, let alone get into it. The Red Talons have a lot of resources. Given time, I'm sure they'll find this place and a way into it, just to get to me. The Rangers sent new orders. They want me to leave the stable tonight," Mom said. Auntie looked a little surprised, saying, "What about Shadow? She's just starting to make friends. You can't just take her away from that. It's too dangerous for a filly like her in the wasteland." "I know. And with her condition, I can't have her leave. Not yet. I don't know what'll happen to her. That is why I'll need to leave her behind and under your care." She said this as if it didn't bother her one bit, but I could feel her chest tighten as she spoke. "What? Me? I don't know the first thing about raising a filly," Auntie protested. "You'll just have to learn like any mother would. I don't like this any more than you do, but that's how it'll have to be," Mom said sternly. Auntie rubbed the back of her head with a hoof. "What will I tell her? You know she'll be heartbroken if she finds out you abandon her. You're the only family that she has," she said. Mom looked away and said, "I know she will. So make something up. If that doesn't work, tell her I died in some kind of accident." "You aren't coming back for her, are you?" Auntie said, putting a hoof on my host's shoulder. I want to, but I don't know what'll happen once I'm gone. Anyway, it'll be better if she never finds out the truth about me or who I really am. At least not until she's older. Promise me that you'll keep her safe and healthy," she said, turning around and pushing Auntie's hoof away. "Grim, I can't let you do this. I don't care what happens to this blasted stable or what your orders are. You can't just leave her alone like this. I won't let you," Auntie said. My mother's head turned, and I could see tears on Auntie's face. "And I can't let you stop me from doing this. The mission is much bigger than you or me. Bigger than my happiness. I'm sorry for this and everything you'll have to face once I leave," Mom said. I could feel a spell building up in my host's horn, and before Auntie could say anything else, my mother's spell put her to sleep. My mother walked over and picked up the pit buck I now wore off the side table in Auntie's room and placed it in her saddlebags. We turned and headed out the door quietly. After taking a quick look around and seeing no pony, she cast another spell. There was a flash of light, and I found we were now in the lower parts of the stable. My mother was always good at teleportation, but going down 10 levels was amazing. She wasn't even tired. I could feel her heart beating a little faster, but that was about it. She moved quickly over to the area where I found my pit buck, behind the old generator. She pushed the door open and walked inside. She pulled the pit buck out of her saddlebag, along with the box I found it in. She placed it into the box, closed it, then cast some kind of cloaking spell on it, along with what felt like a protection spell. After she finished, she stood and said quietly, "Hope this will keep you safe. I only hope I set everything up right. If the Overmare finds it, everything will be lost." Then she walked back out the door. She locked it, and using a couple more spells, she made roots grow over the door, made the shadows dark around the door, and put a spell on it to keep ponies away. I was amazed at what she was able to do. Auntie always told me that my mother was a master of spells, but I never really knew how much until now. She was casting spells that I didn't even think were possible. It was almost like watching an incarnation of the Ministry Mare Twilight Sparkle we read about in class. She was a master of magic too. Hell, it was her special talent. When she finished, I could tell the magic had taken its toll on her body. She felt weak, and her vision blurred for a moment. She shook her head, cursed, but it didn't take too long for it to pass. She made her way back to the elevators and headed back to the atrium. At this time of night, there weren't many security patrols around the area. She lifted her Stable 28 issued pit buck and checked her inventory, then some of her notes. When she seemed satisfied, she pulled out a magical energy pistol and headed toward the door that led in and out of Stable 28. "Halt! Who goes there?" Astian said as she made her way toward the stable door. My host stopped and looked over toward the control panel where Astian was standing. I didn't know him, but I could swear I've seen him before, a long time ago. My mother smiled and said, "Fireball, I didn't think you'd be guarding the door tonight." "Yeah? So what, Unicorn? You know you aren't allowed near here," the security pony said. "Why not?" she asked, sounding confused. But being stuck in her body or whatever, I could feel her readying the magical energy pistol, keeping it hidden behind herself as she spoke. "New orders from the Overmare. No pony is to go near the stable door," he replied. "I have permission to use the door whenever I need. I'm part of the research team, as you very well know," Mom argued. "No teams are going out into the wasteland anymore. The Overmare is worried that if any pony finds out about the research team going in and out freely, there'll be a riot. So go back to your room," he said, pulling out his nightstick. "I'm sorry, Fireball, but I can't do that," she said, pointing the pistol at him. He laughed and said, "What? Do you think you're gonna shoot me, you stupid bitch? If you do, you still won't get out. All you'll do is piss off the Overmare even more." "I'm sure she'll get over it. And why do you think I can't get out if you're dead?" she asked. "Because she changed the codes to the door. Only she knows it now," he said with a smug smile. "Shame. Well, good thing I already got the codes from her office earlier today. I had a feeling she'd be trying something like this. Now back off before I have to do something I don't want to do," she said, her magic starting to pull back a little on the trigger. To my surprise, he smiled and said, "If you leave, I'll make sure my sister finds out, and she'll make your life a living hell. Or she'll do the same to your daughter. Maybe I'll do that myself. She's not too young anymore, and I do like fresh meat. They're way more fun than older mares. So either you drop your gun and come with me back to security, or leave with the idea of what I'll do to that filly of yours once you're gone." I could feel my host's eyes narrow as she said, "No one threatens my family, you sick fuck." Anger laced every inch of her voice as she pulled the trigger. A blast of magical energy hit the stallion before he could do anything. His body glowed bright pink, then he fell into a pile of ash. I guess he really was a fireball. Without a second glance, Mom walked over to the panel, hooked her pit buck up to it, entered the code, and hit the button. With a loud screech, the door opened. She ran out as soon as it started to roll away. Once she was on the other side, she used the outer panel to shut the door. She ran for it. The sound of the door started closing behind her, echoing throughout the tunnels. She smiled, then used her magic to teleport herself right up to the door that led out of the tunnels. Her heart was racing, again, and I could tell she didn't have much left in her. She breathed heavily, looking at the door that led out, inside. She pushed the door open. Then before she walked out, she looked down. Laying on the ground was the old chain and lock near the dead family I found when I left. "Maybe this will keep them from following me," she said as she picked it up. She walked out, then wrapped the chain around the door and locked it from the inside with her magic, making it look as if the family had done so. I wasn't sure why she decided to do that. She looked out into the vast open world and smiled again, saying, "I hope you make it out of there okay, my little morning star. I love you." She finally let her emotions get the better of her, and the tears fell from her eyes. She let them fall as she slowly walked away from Stable 28. I jumped as I came out of the memory orb still sitting next to my head. I looked around, still a little out of it. The experience I just had left tears in my eyes. I had a feeling the memory was of my mother, but what I'd seen I could have never guessed. She left the stable, just like I thought, and Auntie knew about it. She left the stable, leaving me behind because of something to do with my condition. What condition was she talking about? And why couldn't she take me with her? She'd also been the one who left the pip buck mark too. But why? Auntie said something about hidden files. I've looked through the pip buck before, but never found anything on it. I have no idea how to feel about what I saw. I'm not sure if I should feel more abandoned than I already do, or if I should feel relieved, because she left me behind to keep me safe from whatever was out here in the wasteland. For now, I just have to let it be. My best bet was to try and find her and ask her myself. She's the only one who'd be able to tell me the truth. Did you find what you were looking for in there, Shadow? Silver asked, looking up from her bed. I laid my head back down and sighed into the blankets. I'm not sure. It was only the memory of my mother escaping the stable. I really don't know what was so important about it. All I could tell was that there's something hidden in this pip buck, but I have no idea how to find it or why it matters. Well, I'm sure there's a reason for her to leave it behind. You won't know, though, unless you find her and ask her yourself. Though I'm not sure how you're going to find her, she said. After a few moments went by, I finally spoke. I have to at least try. She's the only one who can explain everything. How can you, though? You don't know where to start looking. The Equestrian Wasteland is a large place. She could be anywhere, from New Pegasus to Huffington, Silver said, pointing to different spots on the blankets, as if it were a map. And the memory orb, she said something about the Rangers. I think she was working with them. I should start with them, I said, sitting back up. I looked at her, my red eyes meeting hers. Are you sure that's a good idea? It's been years since that memory took place. You have no idea if she's still with them, or if they'll tell you where she is. I'd be surprised if they even let you in. The Steel Rangers aren't much for outsiders coming to knock on their door. I smiled and said, I'm not worried about that. I think I have a way in. Really? How? She asked curiously. The pony who helped me in the raider camp is a star paladin. She's expecting me to bring the memory orb to them. She'll be my way in, and maybe she can help me find out more about my mother, I replied. She gave a worried look. Okay, but I want you to be careful. The Steel Rangers are all about tech. Bringing that pip buck to them could be dangerous. If you're not careful, you could find yourself at the wrong end of a magical energy rifle. I rolled my eyes and said, I'll do my best. You should go check on Box Tape and that Pegasus. He might be able to help you find your way and get a plan set up, she said. I wanted to say something. Instead, I looked away, getting to my hoofs. I'll do that. Can you do something for me, though? What's that? She asked. Get better and stay safe, I replied with a smile. I could see tears in her eyes as she looked away again. I will. I promise. I'll be here when you come back. I smiled and turned to leave. As I made my way out the door, I heard a soft sob come from her room. I wasn't sure what just happened, but I knew she needed to be left alone. Sometimes it's better to do nothing. That's what Auntie used to tell me. So I left the clinic and headed back to Equestrian Express. I just made it to the door when I almost ran into Stardust. Whoa! Watch it, small fry. Careful where you're walking, he said. I'm not small. You're just massively oversized, I snapped. Not in the mood for the weird Pegasus or his witty remarks. Oversized? Nah, you're just short, he retorted with a smirk. Ass, I said, annoyed at his uncaring attitude. Whatever. So what's the plan? He asked, completely ignoring my irritation. We're going where Sapphire told me to go when I was done with the memory orb, I replied. We? He asked. I thought you were going with me or something, seeing as how you've stuck around since we rescued the prisoners from the camp, I said, pointing out that if he was going to leave, he probably would have done so already. The only reason I stuck around is because I've nowhere else to go, Stardust said. Well, you got nothing better to do. Just go with her. Maybe you could lend a hoof and make sure she doesn't die or get enslaved, or even worse, Box Tape said as he walked into the front room. But she's just she's just, hostile, he exclaimed, pointing a wing at me. Quit being a wussy and just go. I'm sure she won't bite. At least not too hard, Box Tape said with a chuckle. Fine, I'll go. Just let me get my things, Stardust said, mumbling under his voice. This is what I get for being a nice guy. I followed him, saying, You think I'm hostile? You're the one being an ass with your asinine sarcasm. He stopped, looking back at me. Listen, I'm not just an ass. I just call things as I see them. Well, maybe you should think before you talk then, I snapped back. He laughed again and said, I don't see any reason to. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings or anything. I just like to joke around. Whatever, But can you at least try and think before you speak, please? I asked, finally giving in. It took a moment for him to answer. Well, I guess since you were so polite about it. He grinned at me, picking up his saddlebags. What's taking y'all so long? Box Tape called from the other room. Sorry, Box Tape, I replied, walking into the other room, Stardust close behind. Since you'll have to be heading off to the Steel Rangers, I have something for you to deliver for me, Box Tape said. Deliver? Why would I be doing that? I'm on a mission to find my mother, I asked. You're also a courier, and you have a job to do, he replied. I'd forgotten all about agreeing to help Box Tape out with his business. I blushed a little, saying, I forgot about that. What do you want me to bring them? Just a package. Some pony brought it by a couple days ago. It's to go to the elder, and only her. Sender paid up front 300 caps. Your cut is 100, he said, walking over and giving me a small wrap parcel and a small bag filled with bottle caps. I still think it's stupid you all use caps as currency, I said, putting them both into my saddlebags. Not sure what else to use. Anyway, y'all should get going. It's a long walk to the bunker, Box Tape said, before pointing at my pit buck. The mare from before marked the spot on your pit buck, if I remember right. The place is called Hidden Sands. Their bunker is in the middle of it somewhere. But be careful when y'all go near it. They keep some old tech of theirs running that makes a massive sandstorm run through the valley to help hide the entrance to the stronghold. It also keeps their scouts and guards hidden. Don't go wandering around too long in there. Try and find a scout and tell me you're a courier. I looked at the map on my pit buck. I asked, It looks like a long way to go. How long will it take? Hard to say. If the weather stays nice and you don't run into any trouble, shouldn't be longer than 1 or 2 days, Box Tape replied. Wouldn't take too long to get there if we fly, Stardust said, looking over my shoulder at my map. Oh no, I'm a unicorn, not a bird. I don't really want to be flying, only having you to trust not to drop me, I said, looking back at him. Fine, suit yourself, but I'm telling you, it's a lot faster by air, Stardust insisted. That might be, but y'all risk getting spotted by the Enclave. I don't think you'll want to risk being a Pegasi under the clouds being spotted by 'em, Box Tape said. Good point, Gramps. Guess we'll hoof it. Though I never ran into any Enclave ponies before while flying around, he said, turning to leave. Hey, Box Tape, are things going to be okay here? I asked, feeling a little worried that something else might happen to the town. He smiled. Listen, Shadow, you can't be worrying about every pony all the time. Cartwheel's been around for a long time, and we've all seen our fair share of trouble. Don't be worrying about us or me. You go find out what you can about your mom. Also stay safe, and keep an eye on that there Pegasus, you hear? I'll do that, but I don't think he seems like much trouble. He's just kind of a boob, I said. Box Tape gave me a serious look. Listen here, Shadow. I trust him because he helped you, but I talked with him. Most of the story don't add up. Just be careful is all I'm asking, Box Tape said quietly. Okay, I will. Stay safe, Box Tape, I responded. Oh, just get going, he said, turning back into his living room. I walked out of the Equestrian Express. Stardust was waiting for me with his saddlebags packed up and ready to go. A long rifle was slung over his back with a scope on it. So, Shadow, should we get going? Stardust asked. Hey, where did you get that rifle? I asked. He looked back at it, then at me again. Oh, I flew back to the camp about an hour or so ago while you were visiting Silversnip. The camp's empty, and I found it still next to the body of that big pony who was trying to kill you. I sighed. Why would he risk going back there just for a gun? He looked offended. I made this rifle myself. I searched for a week to find all the parts for it when I first got out of my stable. I put a lot of work into it, and it saved me a few times. I couldn't just leave it behind in the mud, or to be found by some wandering pony or raider. Can we get going? I rolled my eyes. Yeah, as long as you're ready. Sure am. We've been hanging around this town for too long as it is, he said. I noticed that, as he spoke, that his eyes were scanning the skies, and his wings were fluttering ever so slightly. I wondered what's got him so nervous. He started walking out of town. I'm not sure what'll happen next, but this was where I'd have to start. I like Cartwheel. I don't want to leave it for the barren equestrian wasteland, but I have to. So I took one last look at Cartwheel, then turned, and headed out, following Stardust. It's been 3 hours and you still haven't said a word, Shadow. What's up? Startup asked as we slowly walked along the northern trail. It wasn't the first time he tried to get me to talk either. I really don't know what to say to him. For the most part, I found him annoying. But I also didn't know how to talk with him. He was a Pegasus from some unknown stable, and he's a stallion. I wasn't good at talking with stallions apart from Balefire, but he'd been my friend since we were foals. Most times made me nervous. None have ever been kind to me at all in Stable 28. Box Tape was different. He was an old pony, and he had a friendly way about him. But Stardust was just so different. I knew I couldn't put it off forever, so I just said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" he asked. "I don't know. I'm just sorry," I said again. He laughed, flapping his wings a little, saying, "Sorry don't mean much if you don't know what you're sorry for. My drill sergeant always said not to apologize for things you don't mean or if you don't know what it's for." I looked at him. "I guess I'm sorry for dragging you with me like this. You really didn't have to tag along. It's not like the old stallion can do much to make you." "Nah, I don't mind at all. Truth be told, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Also, I don't have much to do down here apart from killing raiders and saving a few folks when I can," he said matter-of-factly. "Why do you do that anyway?" I asked, not thinking about what I just asked. He gave me a confused look. "What, save ponies? 'Cause it's the right thing to do is why. And I just want to give folks a better image of Pegasi. What little I know of the Enclave, I know they aren't too kind to folks below the clouds. When I was a colt, I thought I knew everything about the Enclave. They taught us that they'd be the Equestria saviors. Turns out it wasn't the true, though. That's kind of a noble thing to do, I guess." "Nothing noble about it. Just the right thing to do is all," he said. He didn't smile, though. He had more of a sad look to him. I looked down at my hooves as we walked and said, "I was wondering something." "What's that?" he asked. "If you're from a stable like you say you are, why don't you have a pit bull like I do?" I asked. I noticed his lack of one before, but never had the chance to ask him about it. He looked down at his foreleg. "What makes you think all stable ponies have pit bucks?" "In my stable, any pony gets one when they come of age, and from what I read so far in the Wasteland Survival Guide, any stable pony that's come out of a stable has one," I replied. He shrugged. "You aren't wrong, I guess. My stable is different from most. We didn't have unicorns or earth ponies around to help keep 'em running right. We don't have many pit bucks, and the ones we do have to go to the high-ranking officers of the stable. I wasn't important enough to have one. Not that I mind, though. I don't need one. I think it's pretty useful. Helps a lot with targeting and keeping things organized. I looked forward to getting one for a long time," I said, looking down at my pit buck. He scoffed. "I don't need that thing to help me shoot." "Really? How good are you?" I asked. "Best shot around. Didn't you see my cutie mark?" he said, pointing back at his flank. I looked at the cross, surrounded by a circle. Small dots on the lines of the cross. "I thought that means you were some kind of doctor or something. It reminds me of the symbol in the medical back in Stable 28. "You don't know anything about guns, do you?" he asked. "We didn't use them in our stable. Only higher level security had them, and only in case the stable was ever invaded." "What's that have to do with your cutie mark?" I replied. "It's not a cross." "Well, not exactly. The crosshairs of a sniper scope. Got it when I was really young," he explained. "So that means your special talent is shooting ponies?" I asked. "Kinda. It's more like Mark's ponyship, or shooting things accurately. I just really understand guns. I know how they work, how to build them, and how to shoot them really well. Since I was little, I always understood how the rifle would fire, how the bullet would fall depending on the distance, or if other factors were involved," he replied. I cocked my head. "That's kind of an odd cutie mark." He shook his head. "Not in my stable. Most ponies where I come from have some kind of cutie mark that revolves around that kind of thing." "What kind of stable did you live in?" I asked. He got that dark look again, and said in a more serious tone, "It doesn't matter. What about your cutie mark? I haven't seen one like it before. What's your special talent?" "I don't really know for sure. I got it after I broke into the Overmare's office. I wanted to prove to a friend of mine that I could, but one of her guards came in while I was in there. I hid under her desk and was really scared I'd get caught. So I don't know how, but I concentrated really hard and teleported out of the office. I got it somewhere between going into the office and teleporting out," I replied. He started to snicker. "So you ended up with a purple star with 2 keys on it? That's kind of funny. At least I know what mine means." I furrowed my brow. "Hey, I like my cutie mark. I might not fully understand it, but it's still mine, and it's kind of cute." He nodded. "Well, you got me there. It does kind of work on you, and with your mane." I couldn't help smiling. "You know what? You're really not that bad, Stardust." "What makes you say that?" he asked. "Where I come from, I didn't have much to do with the rest of the ponies. I only had a couple of friends. They were the only ponies my age who were nice to me. I never thought I'd ever find other ponies who were, well, good to me. I mean, you aren't really nice to me, but you aren't mean either. So thank you for that, I replied. Can't figure out why anybody wouldn't like you. I mean, you're kind of a shrimp and have a bad temper, but that isn't any reason to be mean. Why were they like that with you anyway? He asked, seeming more sincere than he had before. I was a unicorn in an earth pony stable. They didn't take kindly to me. He was quiet for a while after that, just looking out to the horizon. After some time went by, I finally spoke up again. How long have you been out here in the wasteland? He looked back at me again. About 6 months now. Why do you ask? I shrugged. I was just wondering. I'm amazed you survived this long on your own. Being able to fly and having military level training helps a little, he said with a proud smirk. You know what? I'm kind of bored walking around like this. Do you think you can turn on the radio? Do I look like I'm carrying around a radio? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, all pit bugs have radio in them. Figured you'd know that, he said. I looked down at my pit bug, ignoring his comment, and flipped across a few tabs. I hadn't noticed it before, but there was a radio. Great. So the Pegasus even knows more about my pit bug than I do. There are 3 stations showing up, I said. The only one that matters is the first one, he said, pointing a hoof at my pit bug screen. I reached down and clicked it. Right away, soft music started to play. It was a beautiful voice. She was singing a song that was sad and made you want to cry, but at the same time it was beautiful and made you want to keep listening. Stardust smiled as she sang and closed his eyes, listening to the soft music as it played. It only lasted a minute, when the song ended and a loud, energetic stallion's voice came on. Hello, children of the wasteland. This is your one and only DJ Pon3. That was the beautiful Sweetie Belle. You know what time it is now, my faithful listeners. That's right. It's time for the news. The voice was deep and smooth, and I kind of liked it, even if it did sound like he was shouting. Now, I know I don't get to give you all much news from out in western Equestria, but today I do. For the past few years now, a whole lot of raiders have been blocking the pass just outside the trading town of Cartwheel, keeping the caravans from passing through to the Northwest Pass, making them take the longer and more dangerous route to the north. Well, if you're with the caravans, you won't have to worry anymore about those nasty raiders. Yesterday, a young mare, wearing a courier outfit from the Equestrian Express, went in there all by herself and somehow killed the boss who ran the place and a few of his followers, saving some of the citizens of Cartwheel in the process. Now the entire encampment is gone, and not a single raider is left to terrorize Cartwheel or any traders or caravans passing through. So thank you, courier mare. Whoever you are, keep up the good work. Now here's some sapphire shores for you. I turned down the radio and looked over at Stardust, asking, what the fuck was that? How did this DJ Pon3 know about that? Also, he left out the fact that I had help. He waved a wing. Oh, DJ knows most things that happen in the wasteland, and he's the most honest pony out there. So what if he left out the fact that you had help? Maybe he didn't ever see anything that happened. This was starting to freak me out a little. How did he know about me doing what I did? And how couldn't he have known I had help? He just shook his head and said, no idea, Shadow. No pony really knows how he knows what he does. I just say, take the praise and don't worry about it too much. I huffed. Well, I don't like it. It's pretty creepy, you know. It is what it is. And in the wasteland, I'll take DJ watching over some ponies and keeping the repost going versus the other things that happen around here, he said. From what I've seen apart from raiders, what else can be wrong, apart from the dead landscape and hard living? I asked. He smiled, like I said something ignorant. You gotta remember that you haven't been out here for very long. You haven't seen half of the dangers that you can run into. Hell, I'd take raiders over hellhounds. What the fuck are hellhounds? I asked as we rounded the corner of a tall cliff. He waved his wing again. Trust me, you don't ever want to find out. You won't live long enough to tell any pony else. If you really want to know, though, look in that book of yours. Okay, he's annoying sometimes, but I'll take his word on that one. As we came around the corner, I saw something buzzing around just down the road. It was big and gross. What's that? I asked, pulling out old Festus. Oh, that? It's nothing. Just a bloat sprite. Nasty critters, but not too harmful by themselves, he said, pulling his rifle out, aiming down the scope, his muzzle holding onto the grip. Can you really hit it from this far away? I asked as I watched him aim. He just smiled and took a breath. As he let it out slowly, he fired. There was a loud boom, and a second later, the nasty bug exploded into a few chunks, green ooze flying everywhere. Ew, gross, I shouted in disgust. See? Nothing to it, he mumbled with the grip in his mouth. I'll admit, that was impressive. How does that crappy rifle work so well? I asked as he returned it to his back. It just looks crappy. Like I said before, I built it myself when I left the stable. Used what I could find, but I'm good with weapons, and made sure it was perfect for hitting things from far away. Good gun to have when you're up in the air and you need to kill something down here," Stardust said with a proud smile on his face. "Okay, Deadshot, no need to brag," I started, but he put a hoof up to shush me. "Shh," he said, looking around. His ears perked up high. I pushed his hoof away and said, "What? You know it's not polite to interrupt somebody while they're speaking, right? Especially a mayor." I said, "Shh," he whispered. "Stay here for a sec, and stay quiet." Without another word, he jumped into the air. I watched him go up high, looking around frantically. Then his eyes fell on something down the road, and he dove for the ground. When he landed, I whispered, "What in Celesti's name is wrong with you?" "Damn it, I think they saw me," he said in a worried tone. "Who saw you? Raiders?" I asked. "No, worse," he started to say. I was going to ask him what it was, but right then a loud cry came echoing down the road. It sounded like some kind of tortured monster's word walking down the road ahead. I started to feel the creeping crawl of fear go up my spine as I asked, "What was that?" "Ghouls," he replied, cocking the bolt on his rifle. "What do you mean, ghouls? I met a ghoul back in Cartwheel. He was creepy looking, but a decent pony," I said. "Feral ghouls, to be more exact." "Yeah, I'm sure the one you met in town was normal for the most part, but ferals are a different matter. They don't have any intelligence left. Their brains rotted away a long time ago. All they know how to do is chase you down and rip the flesh from your body. And they always seem to travel in herds," he said, backing up. "Can't we just kill them?" I asked like it was as simple as squashing a bug. He sighed and said, "Normally, yes. But there had to be at least 50 or more down that way. And I think they heard my gunshot. They might have seen me when I flew up there, too. Can't be sure. Their eyesight isn't the best." "What do we do now, then?" I asked, looking down the road. The sound's getting closer. "We could get lucky, and they might wander off." But as Stardust said that, a few of them came over the top of the hill. He hadn't been lying. What stood up there looked like a dead pony walking. Its coat was mostly burned away. Its eyes were dead and black, a look of hunger on its face. The first one to crest the hill used to be a unicorn, its horn missing its tip, its mane just a couple chunks of fluff on its head. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't find my voice as more crested the hill. They saw us and let out a bloody scream and charged, faster than I thought something like that could possibly move. Stardust grabbed me and pulled me into the air just as one jumped at me. "We've got to get out of here, Shadow," he said, climbing higher into the air. He didn't get very high, however, because in the air were more ghouls. They looked like they'd once been Pegasi, their wings only bones with a few feathers still on them. I have no idea how they could fly like that, but somehow they could. Stardust dove for the ground again, pulling up at the last minute right over the other ghouls, zipping fast through the air, going for a crack in the side of the cliff. I felt like I was going to hurl as he zigzagged around the diving Pegasi, jumping ghouls on the ground. He landed a moment later, next to a metal disc in the ground. I looked at it, my head still spinning in sync with my stomach. As I looked down at it, "What's that?" I asked, pointing at the disc. "A pony hole cover. Use your magic and pull it open and get in. We can use it to get away from them," he replied. I did as he said. I focused my magic on the metal disc and pulled. It was heavy, but not too heavy that I couldn't lift it. I heard Stardust firing behind me, keeping them from getting too close. I did my best to ignore it and pulled harder. Finally, it lifted up and opened on old rusty hinges. "Got it!" I yelled. Stardust backed up, and using his hind legs, he pushed me in. He jumped in after me, yelling, "Pull it closed now!" I grasped it once again with my magic and slammed it down hard. As it slammed shut, one of the ghouls' heads got in the way, and the heavy pony hole cover squished its rotting head like a ripe melon, spraying me with blackish red ichor, bone, and gray matter. As the lid closed, I saw a latch on it and twisted it. Hearing something click home, I hoped to Celestia that it was locked. The sound of roaring and screaming could be heard from the outside metal, but it didn't seem like they could open it. Painting hard, I leaned back against the wall and said, "That was scary." "I agree. I haven't seen that many all at once before. We were lucky I saw the tunnel from the air," Stardust said, trying to catch his breath. "Yeah, but what do we do now?" "It's not like they're going to go away anytime soon," I asked. "We'll be fine. Most tunnels like this have another way out. We'll just have to see where it leads and hope it's somewhere safer than out there," he replied. I looked past him at the slightly dark tunnel, then back at the hole we'd just come through. "I think you're right, but it doesn't look much safer down here than up there," I said. "Just keep your gun out and ready for action. Ghouls like dark, damp tunnels like this. If we run into any, there shouldn't be more than a few at a time. Much easier to fight off," he said with a smile. I sighed and pulled my rifle out again. Okay then, let's get going. Shadow? Stardust said. What? I asked. Don't you want to get cleaned up a little first? He asked. I felt my face with my hoof. That blackish stuff was dripping down my once beautiful silver mane, down my face and chest. I looked back up him and shook my head. No point right now. I'll just have to deal with it. Without another word, I stepped past the Pegasus and started to walk down the dark tunnel, not knowing what we'd find, but it couldn't be as bad as what we'd just left. Could it? Footnote. Level up. New perk added. Helping Hoof. Companions are always a good thing to have when wandering the Equestrian Wasteland. When your friends are near, you gain plus 15% chance to get a critical hit while using sats.